and welcome back to Homemade Adventures UK. I'm here with a very lovely and special guest. She's called Moana Rankin, and she's a very good friend of mine. We've known each other, how long, Mo? For over 10 years. It will definitely be over 10 years before I got married.
Way longer than that.
Yeah, wait, but I think because I feel young, it doesn't
I
feel
know.
like that anymore.
Maybe not
So
20, a good 15 years, I'll say.
this is like, Mo, come on, don't age us. So
I
yeah,
was like you when I met you.
Marina and I bonded over humour, similar humour, and now God has us on a similar path of homemade. I had to get her on because she's doing really wonderful things in the homemade community, and I just wanted to share it with you all. So, Marina, thank you so much for being on and joining us today. I have a few questions. Just want to get your idea, your world. What is happening in your homemade world? So, without further ado, could you just let us know uh, about your family, and then we'll delve into a bit of your homemade routine.
Okay. Hi, everyone. As Samantha said, I'm Moana Rankine. I'm a wife, a mum to two boys who are currently 4 and 1.5. Well, more closer to 2 now. He's going to be 2 in September. And yes, I'm a homeschool mum. And I just want to correct Samantha. It was our humor that connected us, but it was actually a jacket. I don't know if you remember. We
Humor
had
over the jacket. Jacket.
identical jacket, and I tried to fit on her jacket. Thinking, why is my jacket shrunk? How did it shrink? I didn't wash it. Only to realize that it was
You
her
have the
jacket,
same
not
jacket.
mine. I'm significantly bigger than Samantha, but yeah, that was what brought us together. I don't think if that incident didn't happen, even though we were in the same vicinity, I don't think we would have like connected.
I just heard so much laughter from downstairs because we had different friends who lived together. And when we came down to find out what was going on, and I just saw Marina like this jacket was like up the hip. Marina's a lot taller than me, guys. And I'm like, someone's like, that's savage. You were adamant. You were like, no, it's mine. And we were all in stitches. But then I think after that, I think we would have been friends because we had a lot in common, like not just dress sense, but and a lot of a lot of revelations about God. And now I don't, so I'm not surprised that we're on a similar journey with educating our children. Are you? I'm not. I wasn't surprised.
Surprised either. I'm
So
not.
no, it's just lovely to still have that connection. And Moana lives in Birmingham, by the way, so I don't get to see her as often as I would like, but I think we've got to make that happen more. But that's
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately we're not as regular together, but it's nice to know that we always pick up where we left off there. But yeah.
So Samantha's definitely one of those people that I cannot see her. If I didn't see her for 20 years, I know we'll just pick up
I'll
where
be
we
too
left off.
long.
That's just how we are. Like
Yeah.
whenever I see it, it's just like I saw her yesterday. So she's
Oh,
one of those people, and yeah, she's lovely.
it's a blessing.
And yeah, so in terms of my home education story, how I came about home education, I actually have a deep history in education itself. I did a degree in business entrepreneurship with education studies. I don't know why I did that degree because when I left, I was like, I didn't know what I didn't have a direction basically.
Yeah.
I had an ambition of that led me to going to university, but once I left university, I was just kind of confused about what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to specifically teach, but I wanted to help children and young people at the time.
Mm.
And so I took that desire to help and worked in schools under different titles
Mm.
over the years. I did teach at points. I also worked as a TA, I worked as a mentor, and then eventually I ran a independent school with my husband, and we closed that
Mm.
around the time of COVID. And then we had a child just before COVID. I probably shouldn't say that word on because you made that on YouTube.
Is that what?
Realized
Why?
because
Are
on
you not
YouTube I said
not
COVID.
you're
Yeah,
not
on
allowed to
YouTube
say it?
I don't know. Some YouTubers are like they don't say the whole word, so you can bleep it out if you need to.
I'll
But
call it convid.
yeah, that's probably a
That's
better.
another video. That's a whole another video. But I mean, I
Yeah.
don't mind. I've said it before. Um,
Okay,
it's
I
it.
don't know. Maybe it's the bigger YouTube channels, like, but you're gonna.
Why? Do they
I don't
get
know.
shadows or something or
It's one of
banned
the
or?
things that I think people are scared of trigger words that the algorithm might pick up, and so they avoid
Oh.
it. But I don't know. I say it when I need to, but I'm aware that I'm on somebody else's channel,
Oh no,
so
I don't mind. You be you, girl. Like
okay.
you
Okay.
as the spirit leads. No, I'm cool. Like I've said, I mentioned it because I think that COVID was a big factor in
Yeah.
well in life and in a lot of homemade decisions as well. So no, that's fine. Yeah, please.
Okay. So I had my first son in 2019, and just before he was born, I think was when, yes, it was when I was pregnant. I remember there being this uh the petitions going around about stopping schools from introducing sex education to primary school children, I think it was. I don't know if it went as low as nursery, but I know primary school. And I
Mm,
knew that I didn't want my son to be in an environment where he was learning about things that wasn't suitable for his age
mm,
at the time. When I was pregnant, I knew that I didn't want that to happen. So I shared that petition. I
mm.
did get some like some some what's the word
Backlash.
and backlash about that,
Yeah.
and I realized it's kind of one of those things that either you have the revelation or the conviction or you don't, and I did have that conviction, and I knew that when it became a law, I knew that I didn't want to send him into school
Mm,
for that reason. That wasn't one of the main reasons, but because I also had the knowledge of how to teach and the background in education, I knew that homeschooling was something that I could do. Even though I don't think you need to have that background to be a homeschooler, it's just I just had that extra bit of confidence to know
Can
that
I,
it's something that I could do, teaching the child.
can I just elaborate on that because I hear that that's something that puts people off home education because they think that you need to be a qualified teacher or um, and it's I'm glad that you know you added that bit on after because obviously we have different backgrounds but I think that so you're a good person to can you explain why even though you have got the qualification why you think that that's not necessary.
That's a good question. The reason why I don't think it's necessary, I actually think it's an advantage if you don't have that background in as a teacher, because I believe that in a home education setting, it's different to school. So you are teaching a child, but when you have that knowledge of how a school runs and how lessons run and lesson plans and all these things, sometimes you can get hung up on that rather than the actual education of the child. And that's one of the problems that a lot of teachers have. They have a problem with a lot of stress around lesson plans and structures, and it causes a lot of anxiety for teachers. A lot of teachers leave the system because of that reason, because it's a burden. And but when you're just a parent who knows, like I believe that all parents have an intuition about what their children need, and you just follow your intuition. And I'm learning more and more to follow my intuition over the structure, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Even though I do use curriculums just for ideas and inspiration, I'm not rigid to it as schools are. And so that's why I think it's probably a benefit if you haven't had that like training, because you're gonna be more intuitive in how
mm,
you and spirit led. If you're a
wow.
believer, you're more in tune to how the spirit leads you to teach a
Okay.
child. And so that's why I don't think it's, yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
it's, yeah,
When
having,
people ask me like, oh, but you're not, so I get asked a lot, oh, you're a teacher, or you were a teacher. And I'm like, no, I wasn't.
yeah,
And I realized I'm like, but teachers, they still follow like the syllabus, the guides. They don't know everything.
yeah,
We have guides and curriculums and syllabus. So it's okay, we didn't go to this, you know, well, university or whatever to study it. But
yeah,
I think as well, there's something beautiful about learning with the child, because
yeah,
then it shows the child that actually you can continue learning. It doesn't stop. So I think my children watching me learn alongside them is actually giving them a good example of a lifelong learning experience, which it should, because I think there's this cap we have that after university, then you just go to work and you stop learning,
yeah,
which should never happen. And
no,
the answers are all out there anyway. I think, who was it? Someone said, was it Elon Musk lately? He said, all the information's there, it's all free. Like, we've got so many resources now that
yeah,
you don't need to actually, unless obviously it's mandatory, like you have to have certain qualifications for certain professions. But if you're
yeah,
not called to those professions,
yeah,
then you don't have to be institutionalized like that. But
exactly.
so I like what you said, because I've never looked at it that way, that actually I'm at an advantage, because I didn't see it as a disadvantage anyway, because I realized, well, we're still learning, like we're still, and actually I'm what the curriculum that we follow, it's called, I'm redeeming my education with them, because I'm
Yeah,
actually being taught, because I feel like what a lot of the school system is just cramming facts for tests, but that's not learning.
no,
That's, you
no.
know, yeah.
Yeah, to me, learning is about trial and error as well. And you have that freedom within home education to do that. Whereas school, you get penalized for getting things wrong. Whereas with home education, you got more of a time to express your creativity and your passions and curiosity, and you try things. And if it doesn't work, you just change course and direction. And I think that makes things easier for a child when they get older. From like my research recently, I've seen that quite a lot of homeschool children go on to be quite entrepreneurial, which is, I believe, that trial and error basis kind of gives them that confidence when they leave school to be able to try lots of different things
Yeah.
and take a path that is more in line with who they are as a person. They don't have to go to university and then relearn what they what they're here to do and who they are, that or learn, I should say. A lot of people go through education and don't know who they are. Like I didn't really know who I was. I kind of lost touch with all my creative side. Everything was just about survival, really. But in more recent years, I've become more in touch with
Mm,
my creative side and I try and express that, and I try to make as much time for my children to express it as well.
mm,
With my 4-year-old, he does a lot of arts and crafts. He really enjoys it. I gave him that influence, I think, from my love for like experimenting with different materials, and he now like makes random things all the time, and I think that helps him as well with his learning, because he's making use of his natural resources
yeah.
to come up with ideas, and I think that's what learning is all about.
Oh, definitely. I read recently, I'm reading a book called The Conversation, and it's by Lee Bortins, and she is a scientist. She was a space scientist, and she ended up home educating her children, and she talks about the subjects in synergy. So that your son doing the arts and crafts is not just for arts and crafts, because he will take those skills and will apply it to math, will apply it to science, will, because
Yeah,
it's the same processes of working things out. And like you're saying, I think there's so much emphasis on you have to get the right answer, you have to get, but actually people don't realize that no, it's in the journey of processing,
Mm.
there's learning. And that's
Yeah.
why Apple, Apple,
Yeah.
they won't, they want to know if you failed at something. They want to know because they know if you haven't, then you haven't really been learning. You haven't been applying because
Mm.
there's getting things wrong, making, I don't even like to call them mistakes. With my children, I just call them, okay, we just learn the way that doesn't work, so we'll find the way that works. And then sometimes as well, especially things like art, who's to say what's wrong or right? Some things that there's not a wrong or right. So I like what you hit on there, because I think in the book what she was getting at was, sadly, and I've seen this as well a lot, is that lack of encouraging the imagination and the creative. Well, that is when we're closer to God. Like, we are made in God's image and He is a creator, and we like to create things because
Yeah.
we're made in His image, like, and He gave us that skill. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not encouraged to do that, and you're not, allowed to do it, if you're not free, then that gets stumped, and that actually affects the other areas. And it's interesting, I was talking to my children's music teacher, and she was saying that all of her students, and she's taught for years and years, doing music has helped them in their maths. It
Wow.
improved their maths,
Yeah.
because it's the same similar processes that
Yeah.
that cross over. So we
Mm-hmm.
can't take, and another friend of mine was saying that it's interesting, when they want to cut budgets, they always start with the arts,
Mm.
like they're
Yeah.
not as important as the STEM, but
Yeah.
not realizing that, no, you're missing out, because people don't realize there's parts of your brain you use when you do music, when you do crafts, when you do English as another other languages,
Mm-hmm.
that actually help the other areas. So
Yeah.
it's, I think the more you learn, so now that you've been doing it, obviously your eldest is still quite young, but the reason you started, which is just as important, like protecting our children from agendas that are just wrong, like, why corrupt them? I feel that was one of the reasons I home educated. Like, I don't want to let my children have a childhood and don't corrupt them with
Yeah.
things that are just ungodly. Like, we really felt that that was our responsibility, to protect them until
Yeah.
the right time. We're not saying we're sheltering them. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, my children actually came to me with certain things. And
Yeah.
then, okay, that's the right time. So then but I want to be the one to discuss it with them, not
Yeah.
someone with another agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm very matter of fact, I don't hide things from them. But
Mm-hmm.
is that still, obviously that would be still be a big issue, but other than that element, are
Yeah.
you now seeing other positives of home eds that
Yeah.
you probably didn't even think of?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
But I think one of the biggest ones that people don't really talk about is the fact that we have children so that we can enjoy them. And when we're sending them to school for how many hours is it? Is it 6, 7 hours a day? I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's like the main part of their day. They're not even
Mm.
with you. And then they come home and it's time to feed them and wash them, put them to bed. And what type of lifestyle is that where you can only you you can't even go on holiday with them in at
Oh
peak
my
time.
gosh.
You have to wait till everyone else is off school.
Mm.
And if you can afford a flight because of the fact that there's so many people to compete with,
Mhm.
that's the only time you get to go away with them. A few times a year, if you go away, or even just going, even just spending time during the holidays, it's just not really what we had children. I don't think that's the ideal for having children.
Mm.
I don't, and now that I'm teaching my son, I see that the home environment is the best way for him to thrive because he's got that support from people who genuinely love him. And then we also go out as well as we have different activities that we do throughout the week. So he's got an interaction outside of the home with people of different ages, and so he's not forced to just interact with one group of people. Like I know that when I was growing up, I was very shy, and I think going through the systems didn't help that because I'd have a limited time to get to know people. Because they say that school is where you make friends, but you literally only have like you have a maybe an hour break if that, probably 40
Yeah,
minutes.
you're told to not talk most of the day, right?
The rest of the day you're working, so it's not really it's not
Yeah,
really an ideal environment. When in a life where we have choice, I now realize that going to sending children to school isn't always the best choice for them. And I think it's up to each parent to really dig deep and question why they had the children in the first place, and is what they're learning in school the best education that they can get when they have a choice to learn literally everything. Is what the school is teaching them the best choice for their children. I
mm,
think people really need to sit back and watch what's going on in the world as well. It's not just from my personal standpoint, it's from the facts of there's the increase in emotional problems, the increase in suicide, and all the problems that are happening as a result of how children are being corrupted.
yeah,
When it all boils down to that, really, the way that they're corrupted and the way their ideologies are causing them to lose connection with themselves. They are tending well, if those who not many are taught Christian values, and we're turning further and further away from the Most High as a generation, and it's becoming more evident in the way that people are behaving, children are
ever.
behaving, and
Honestly, the evidence is there,
yeah,
like all around. I have a friend whose son just started school, year seven, so secondary school, and
yeah,
literally the amount of fights that he's witnessed and recorded on his phone just since September, and it's barbaric. Like it's because
yeah,
he showed me one, and I'm just like, same sentiment. They need God. Like they're so lost. And yesterday, the other day, I was with a friend, and her daughter's only she's 15, she says, so she's at the GCSE stage, and she's like, Sam, they all a lot of them take drugs, and not just weed. Like I remember weed at school, like we, people did weed, and no, I'm talking cocaine now.
mhm,
Like teenagers are taking, and I'm just like, I think it's served it's done what it wanted to do, like
yeah,
which is, corrupt
yeah,
and sadly, but I thank God, I feel like people are waking up because home ed is getting more popular. Um, so it's encouraging to see that people are, but I think if people actually also thought about where it started, always
mhm,
ask, because I really can't get across enough. We have to ask why. We have to always ask why we do things, where it came from, who started it. And the education system started because of the industrial era. They wanted basically slaves. Like, so it wasn't for benefit of the
yeah,
people, it was for their benefit. So
yeah,
don't expect a system that was set up to stifle and to create robots for their factories to
yeah,
benefit you. And why do you think they'll get taught different if you paid for their education? So,
mhm,
but now I'm actually starting to see, I'm glad we didn't put our children in private school either, because sometimes it's just as bad, but also that can bring a whole different pressure where now
mhm,
the children feel like there's a lot of pressure to succeed now. And again, another friend, a psychotherapist, this got confirmed to me. She said she has a lot of clients that were grammar and privately educated,
mhm,
and they're traumatized by, and Princess Diana's brother just brought out a book about it, about boarding school and the whole issue of abandonment. And you know, what goes on there, the abuses in the system. And like you're saying, just I feel like the enemy's done such a good job of breaking up families and using the education system as well, because people were not asking the questions, is this the best way? And
Yeah.
actually, I feel like God is bringing us back to even, you know, just to basics. What was, because children were brought up in the home, they were taught by their family, like you're saying, the people that love them, the people that had the best interest. Something that you touched on, Mo, that so you have a 4 and a 1 year old. So you've obviously the 1 year old's he's still living his
Yeah.
his best baby life. So we don't he's probably not doing the ABCs yet. But
Yeah.
how do you handle homemade with a baby? And can you give us an idea about your homemade routine?
Yeah. So in terms of the routine, I've recently started doing morning baskets, which is where we have a collection of worksheets, books, and stationery that we do. It's not every morning, but I have it ready that on days where we're not ready to go straight into like a lesson, we will go, I'll place it on the table and my son will do whatever's in there. So there'll be different activities. Some might be science based, some like reading based, some just fun worksheets that you can do. That, and it doesn't require a lot from me at that time. It kind of eases us into the day. And then I set aside 2 hours. So it's not always in the morning. Sometimes it might be in the early afternoon or even late afternoon. Like if we've gone out, when was it? We went out a few times. So like on Tuesdays now we go swimming. So on a Tuesday, I know that most of the time we won't get that his homeschooling done in the morning. So I do it when we come back. And so I just block 2 hours. I just know that for 2 hours in the day, he needs to sit down and we need to do some work together intentionally. Because if we don't do that intentional education, even though he's learning in other things like through play and other areas, activities that we do, and if we don't do it intentionally, there's certain things that he might miss. And so in terms of what we actually do, I have a list of what children should know ideally by year one. So he's actually technically preschool. He's he's supposed to technically start as a reception child in September, but because he turned 4 last September, I wanted to kind of ease our way into the home education so that I knew that by the time he's supposed to be starting, I would be ready more than him.
Yeah.
Because I think that another big thing about home education, I think it's more about the parent being prepared than the actual
And
children.
you feeling the pressure. Yeah.
Children do actually enjoy learning,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's up to us to learn how they enjoy learning. We need to learn them. We need to study them in order to
Yes.
provide the best approach to teaching them.
So what have you seen from your son? Like, how do you think he enjoys it?
So
What do you think his style is? Because he's still quite young. I mean,
yeah,
I'm very mindful that a lot of countries, they don't start school till they're 7.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think there's a big reason for that, especially for boys.
yeah. I
Yeah.
have I have heard that, and I'm aware of that as well. But I try to ease it in. So the
Mhm.
2 hours, if I feel that he's being resistant, I will narrow that down. But
Yeah.
I do
You go
try.
with him.
Literally, what I'm doing right now is getting him into the idea of education, of formal education, because there's informal education. There's people that like people that are unschoolers that will just follow the lead of the child. But I do feel like there needs to be a bit of structure
Mm,
in order for a child to succeed, because when they leave education, they're going to have to follow some form of structure. So they need to learn that there is something called a routine
yeah.
that they that they can expect, so that when he does become 7 at the age that's other countries aspire towards, he'll be ready, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I try to be flexible, put it that way.
Yeah. I think there you go. There's another thing we agree on because unschooling, because I've seen some evidence. There was a study about a certain institution where the kids literally just went and it was all child-led, and then all the children left and they well, actually, I've just heard this. So actually, I would actually want to see this, but see, this is something I'm learning. Don't just take someone's, see it for yourself, right? So this is what I heard. They all did really well. So, and I can see both sides because I do know some unschoolers as well. And I've actually seen some on social media and I've seen, and but I think when I was praying about it, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, is that God's way? Because from what I see biblically, it says, bring up the child in the way they should go and guide them, teach them, shepherd them,
Yeah,
like Christ teaches us. And I feel like I know my children as well. If I said to them tomorrow, I'm going to unschool I'm going to be led by you,
yeah,
sorry, but they would be, especially my son, telly all day,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
or, you know, and and then I'm like, is it just me? Do I want to control them? But I think there's a sense of uneasiness, especially I've noticed with a lot of Christians. So we're
yeah,
all like-minded in this sense that there's a sense of uneasiness that we know, whereas as the Bible says, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. Like if
yeah,
we
yeah,
leave children to their own devices, yes, eventually they may find their way, but you're gonna, why waste those precious formative years,
yeah,
and I'm not saying to control them, like there's a difference. I think there's a difference when because I've heard of crazy things like a mum would dress up as a headmistress and have a whistle and children are wearing uniform, and I'm like, that is, I'm not recreating, Mrs. Trunchbull Matilda school here. Like I don't want to go that extreme, but at the
yeah,
same time I agree with you, like the order and you know, the whole, you work, there's a time to work, there's a time to play. And I think even as children, that's not destructive to teach them at a young age, like responsibility but obviously age appropriately. But I totally agree with you that, and because I toyed with the idea and I'm just thinking, but where are the lines anyway? Because there's
yeah,
got to be a bedtime, there's got to be a, they eat at certain times, they have to keep things tidy, like they have to, and then even in speaking to people, there's just so many different ideas about it. There's not a, so I just thought, I don't and then God led us to a curriculum that was so anti unschool, like we now do the classical model of education, which is okay, right, God really didn't want us to unschool. And
yeah,
but even then, it's not, classical education doesn't mean, you know the ruler on the hands, like it's not like, okay, there is freedom, like you're saying. I think you said something really critical at the beginning. It's about the child, it's tailoring it to the child's needs, the child's bent, the child's character, but at the same time instilling certain godly characteristics, because I think as home educators, Christian ones,
mhm,
I remember God saying to me one day, would you see Prince Harry and William in any school down the road, any public school, any old
no,
school? No.
no,
Why?
because they they have a standard of education, I would have thought.
Well, they're the king's kids, right? But
Yeah,
who's our kids belong to?
yeah, that's true,
Who do
actually.
we belong to? The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So God's like, I
Yeah,
have a standard for my children as well. And the Bible teaches us, test, search. He wants us
yeah,
to have understanding, knowledge. He gives us clues, mysteries that must be sought out. And you can't do that if you can't read, if you don't understand science and even maths, because there's a lot of maths in the Bible. Like, and yeah, it just, I
yeah,
agree with you, but then
yeah.
it's getting the balance of
You do
not,
need a balance.
yeah,
You do need a balance because, like you say, children don't know what they don't know, so they're not going to teach themselves something that they don't know. And by depriving them of that information, by making them completely lead themselves, I think it's damaging personally. From a
Well,
logical
yeah.
perspective, I've not looked into any of these studies, but I remember there was a pastor who I used to listen to, and he was he went to two schools, one which was a formal education, one which was a Montessori school, and he
Okay.
said that at the Montessori school there was a lot of emotional problems in the children because they they didn't there's a something about structure that makes you feel loved, and when you have too much unstructure, it
Yeah.
can cause an imbalance.
So what
And
was that pastor? Was he like a teacher
he
or?
was no, he's just a pastor online that I used to listen to.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he was just telling about his background,
Mm.
and I can understand.
What's his name? Do you know?
His name is Doug Batchelor.
I like to look into these things and I like
Yeah,
to, okay, Doug Batchelor.
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't really listen to him anymore because there's
Okay.
certain things I'm not sure about. When
Okay. So, well, you know what? You can throw
yeah,
away the stuff. I heard the
yeah,
other day, everyone has the good and the bad, and you can throw away
yeah.
the bad. Don't just yeah,
What is it? Chew the meat, spit out the bones.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that always stuck with me as well because it just no one can bring themselves up.
So,
Sorry,
what did he see with the
but
other?
it, like he
I,
I think he said somewhere suicidal,
oh my
like, in terms
gosh.
of the because they didn't have that that they didn't feel that they were led in an atmosphere, even though it's nice to lead yourself,
Hmm.
can cause detriment. It can be to your own detriment if you're only leading yourself, because then imagine it's a bit like God leading us to our own devices. If he left us to do what we wanted to do, we'd self-destruct. So there has to be some form of structure.
Well,
If-
even the Bible says there is safety in the multitude of counselors.
exactly, yeah.
And it's funny you say that because growing up, my dad, he's very like, he didn't care. He was just like, my dad was a postman for, he left school young, postman for all his life. So he's like, education, he just did not, he did not care. And
Yeah.
my mum, she's really busy, bless her. And so no one was really guiding me. And I
Mhm.
always say that, and it's funny you say that because I can relate. And I was so lost and
Yeah.
just trying to work out my own way. And then I did feel a sense of hopelessness, like what's the point? And it's
Yeah.
only when I became a Christian and got that guidance from God and then people around you that I always say I wish I had someone just to maybe who could have taught me when I was younger. I wouldn't have wasted so much time. And now there's things that I think I'm so glad I can teach my children early and let
Mhm.
them have a better head start rather than feel like they're catching up.
Yeah.
And it's just like that thing, right? You know, you hear a lot lately about rich people. They're like, oh, they're not going to leave anything for their children because their children need to suffer like they did. Well,
Yeah.
and even that is unbiblical because it says a godly man leaves an inheritance for his children, but you're meant to not just leave an inheritance, but you're meant to teach them how to be good stewards of that inheritance, right? So
Yeah.
we see, yes, we might see a lot of people, like, not being good stewards of their inheritance, but that did you teach them?
Yeah.
Right? And that's I think was lacking in a lot of family dynamics and just obviously like you said people turning away from God's wisdom. That's when the chaos is created. But if you stay in the confines of his wisdom because he knows best, it's that's where the blessing is, right? That's where the yeah. So it is. Wow, I like the way you put things. It's almost like you saying what is I was thinking, which is what usually happens with us. This is
Yeah.
why I like doing interviews though, because it's
Yeah.
like
You get
when in the process of hashing things out, that's where you get understanding, right? You putting your thoughts into words, and then
yeah.
oh yeah, what you said. That's what I knew why it made sense because
Yeah.
I had an uneasiness about unschooling, but I never heard it the way you put it.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. Yeah, it's just something that I do think about. To be fair, I've never thought it was a good idea, but I can see the I can see the why people might try it out because
Mm,
it's so anti-establishment, because
yeah,
especially if you've had a very bad experience in school, you'll want to go the opposite way. But
yeah.
I just don't think I'd like to know what happens with those children in 30
In the
years' time.
long run.
We need to do like a long-term study on that to understand
And I'm
the
looking forward to a lot more long-term studies as home ed gets more popular.
yeah.
I really do. And I'd love to do a study. I'd love to actually, I've one of the reasons I home educate was because of a long term, but it was from America. And
Mm.
he studied the different institutions. He went all the way from like public school to boarding school to private school to um and then home ed, but different forms of home ed as well. Like you're saying, just unschooling, and then but Christian home ed came out on top, intentional Christian home ed, and so that encouraged me. I was like, oh, because I like statistics, I like facts, and he's like, okay, well, I can't argue with the facts, like, and on that note, so do you think you will home educate right the way up to?
Definitely my intention. If
Yeah.
the Most High allows it, that's definitely what I want to do, and that's what's in my mind to do. I just need to get that message out to family and friends because people always ask me, when are you sending him to school?
It's
Never.
all right. They'll get it. Maybe like when he's 10. I think my family just starting to realize now. She's never going to school. But
Yeah.
well,
Hopefully
yeah.
they'll see. Hopefully they'll see the results after. And to me as well, I, the pressure isn't really on me to the extent that it might be to some parents, because I can understand before COVID happened,
Mhm.
and where there was a smaller homeschooling community, I can imagine a lot of people who took that route of home education were probably nervous about what's going to become of my child in like 20 years time. But to me now, seeing what they're doing in schools and how children are turning out, at least I will know I did my best to guard my children from that corruption. And I think that's the at the very fundamental level, that is my aim, to protect them from corruption, and then educate them in the skills and the knowledge that they need to have, because from their corrupted, from the level of the soul, then everything else, what is it like? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?
So I got really excited here when Moena quoted Mark 8, verses 34 to 38, because if you would have watched the video from last month when I was at Haven Caravan Park, that scripture God has really been laying on my mind and a lot lately, and it keeps coming up. So when she echoed it, it got me really excited, and that is just such a timely verse, and I think God is really wanting to tell us something through that. So that was the little happy dance that I did.
It's keeping the soul first, and then after that is all the education and all the information. And I feel that as I go along the journey, I'm becoming more connected with people, and I feel like God is giving me what I need step by step. He doesn't give it me all at once. It's like as you go, he gives you more and more. It's like a jigsaw, and he's putting all the pieces together, and he connects you with people, and you get inspiration from them and ideas, and then it helps you to. And I know that I'm only in year one, but I
No.
can see how it's progressing.
I
And
think because I knew you as having that home ed um, school that you guys did before,
yeah,
I see you as you home educate for longer. Like, because I remember you did the school
yeah,
with the independent school.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like you weren't so new. So I wasn't really
yeah,
shocked when you had your own children because I knew that you
yeah,
guys had already lent that way.
Yeah.
But it's I know as well you're such a blessing to the home ed community now. And can you just touch on a bit of, do you have any socialization issues? The big up. Do you get asked that a lot? Socialization.
Well,
Like,
I did at the beginning actually.
yeah.
And I was actually quite, that was one area where I was like, I need to be intentional about this because naturally I'm a homebody at the moment. Like I don't know what it is. So when I turned 30, in my
Get
I
out.
just like being at home. I don't really like going out. But and because I knew that I'm a home person, like that's probably another reason why you haven't really seen me much. I don't really venture out far these days. But because I've got children now, I have to make sure that I'm more intentional about going out, and their dad takes them out a lot as well. And the way that I combated how I have been combating that, well, first through prayer, I prayed about that because I knew that it was something that they needed, especially being very young. They need to be around peers. And so I prayed about a group. I prayed for a group that they could attend, and you never guess what? Probably into like 2 months of intentionally homeschooling because education is something that we do from when they are born. But from when I said I'm home educating this year, 2 months after that, I put a message into a WhatsApp group that I was part of and asked if anyone knew about any homeschool meetups. And someone DM'd me or messaged me and said, yes, we have this group that meets. And when I looked at the address, it's literally a 10-minute walk from my house. So we've been going to this group on a Monday since I think it was from December.
Yeah.
And we've been consistently going. I think they were shocked that we continue to go because there's my boys are one of the youngest. Well, Asha, the youngest, is definitely the youngest, but Samson is one of the young. I think there's a 3-year-old and then him, and then the others are like 4 or 5, all the way up to I think around 14. So it's a mixed group of children.
Nice.
But they're it's mainly mums. There are a couple of dads that I've seen, but mainly mums bring them there on a Monday and they study in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they do like a group exercise. So they've done cooking, they've done games, quizzes, like they do different things. But for me, the aim wasn't, because I teach him at home anyway, the aim wasn't really to teach him there. It was to get him socializing with the other children, to have faces that he can see every week consistently and know that those are like children who, like him, are being educated at home. So that has been a huge blessing. And besides that, we take them swimming. We were doing football, but we've stopped that. But we want to get back into football again. And then we just do like outings. We take them to the park quite a lot. Museums we've done, like different. We had a subscription to Lego Land, so we did that for last year. We did especially the center that's in the Discovery Center because Samson loves Lego and Asher's starting to get into it now. So yeah, we've done quite a lot of little things like that. Like when we see things advertised, we try and go like where there's like meetups or even just little outings available for the community. We go and just try and make the most of it, really.
Is there quite a thriving home ed community in Birmingham?
There is, yeah. It's like we can have as much or as little as we want.
We're
like
spoiled now, right? Like,
there is literally a lot of things that we could do on a daily basis. But I'm aware of my energy levels because I've only got so much I've only got so much capacity.
Trust me, when they get older, sometimes I just feel like they're Uber driver. I'm just like, how did I become like a personal chauffeur to three little people that don't pay me? Like, I just feel like, trust me, enjoy the time now when they're young. But No, that's good to hear, because that is always a concern. And I'm hoping that that really does get, quashed soon, because
Yeah,
that used to be such a issue. And do you know, I'm not going to lie, I've seen the change, like especially after COVID, it boomed. And because I've been homeschooling for a good, well, I say it is like you're saying, it's like 10 years. Okay, but if she's 10, so officially it would have been 6 years. But there's definitely so much more now. So people who are considering it shouldn't even see that as an issue,
yeah,
because, like you're saying, there's more than enough. In fact, you can't do everything. And it's
yeah,
nice to hear that it's not just a London thing,
yeah,
it's quite a national thing. And I've seen even Portsmouth has a thriving community, so it's nice to hear Birmingham. I know Manchester does, so
yeah,
I'm sure that in the other areas. And what I love about the homing community is, if it's not there, you can just do it. Like,
yeah,
we've just set up a football. One dad loves coaching. He's just set it up for the kids. He takes his kids out anyway, so he just invited, and now every week it's growing. Today there was over 10 kids.
yeah.
And
That's,
so, I love, it's very obviously because you've got that thing in common. Everyone's looking for the same thing, so it's not hard to band together and just do
yeah,
it for our kids. And I think it's for us as well. Like, I think it's healthy that we get adult interaction and not just with them all the time.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And to be able to speak to the other parents and glean things from them as well. There's a lot of wisdom, because there's people of different who have been homeschooling for different lengths of time that can give you information. And yeah, it seems to be how, like how people talk about the village. I
Mm.
feel like I've got a village now.
Oh, and it's 10 minutes from you. That's awesome.
Yeah, we
That's,
have broken up. So for the summer weeks, we're meeting in parks now,
mm,
but hopefully back by the winter we'll meet up again. If
oh,
in that building. If not, then I'll try and find them wherever they
yeah.
decide to meet. But yeah, I'm just glad that I got that thing that forces me to take them.
Part 2 coming up next week. In the next video, we'll delve into how Moana's creativity and business acumen are blessing the home ed community. Join us next week for part 2. You won't want to miss it. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. God bless you. Bye. I have a special hair-raising, exciting announcement to make. On the 7th of August, myself and 2 other parents from our Classical Conversations Home Ed community are going to be raising funds for the home ed families for this year, and I'm hoping to raise enough money to cover our venue fee and to help families that need extra assistance. So if you can in any way possible, I'd really appreciate your support in this. The link to the Just Giving page is in the description. Updates will follow, and of course I'll be recording and taking you along this next adventure with me. This has been something I've wanted to do since I was a teenager, and now is the time and the right cause, and I'm really looking forward to this. So come along and join me, and thank you for any assistance you can give. God bless you. Bye.